office, which is very, very unusual. But Colonel Wall got me into his office and he asked me, we have a lot of GIs coming into the service who can't read, and that was true at that time. The human resources of guys going to the service was being depleted toward the end of the 60s. And what the government was doing, they were doing all kinds of strange things. They were taking guys out of prison, out of jails. They were sweeping the southern borders in Texas and Arizona and picking up illegal aliens, and they would immediately put in the military. And that's the way quotas would be filled. Given that population, a lot of the guys that were coming in the military were illiterate. They couldn't read. And so Colonel Wall says, we have this problem as a military. We want to work on the literacy of these inductees because we need the manpower to support the effort in Vietnam. And so he asked me a very interesting question. He said, can you teach somebody how to read in 6 weeks? Now, usually I'm reflective in my thinking. I like to think of questions. But by the grace of God, I answered appropriately. When he asked the question, I said, absolutely, sir, I can do that. In the back of my mind, I think, what the hell are you saying to this colonel? And then the next question was, can you teach somebody how to read in 6 weeks without any textbooks? And again, I said the right thing. I said, of course I can. And he said, well, good, because you're now the director of a school that we're setting up at North Fort Lewis called Army Preparatory Training. And he went through what it was going to be. I was going to have 10 instructors working for me, because I was the only one that had a background in reading education. 5 of them would be civilian, and 5 would be military. And we have 150 students coming into this, what was called APT, on a 6-week cycle. On a 6-week cycle. And this was some of the best teaching I've ever done. It was amazing. Because when you go into a situation, you realize that you can't depend on books and labs and hardware and software. You've got to do it with who you are and what you know. You can't believe how creative you are, how creative you become. And this group of people, this group of instructors, we did wonderful things with GI. We created an unbelievable curriculum, a relevant curriculum, all the things that we talked about today in education. And I challenge you, as good prospective teachers, at some point in time, set aside your books and teach with your heart and with what you know. You'll be amazed at what you'll be able to do. Went over to APT, helped start the school, and let me tell you a story about one GI. I know I'm running out of time, but let me tell you a story about one GI. There's a guy from the hills of Tennessee, Elmer Wright. I'll never forget him. And he came to the school and he could not read anything. He was totally illiterate. And he told me upon his interview, we interviewed each GI and test them individually. He told me that he came into the military because God told him that if he would join the Army, he would learn how to read. Now that's great motivation. If God tells you to do something, pay attention and do it. Okay, so he did. He joined the military, and by golly, he landed in this school. He could learn to read. Now my job as an instructor was easy because he wanted to learn how to read. Now what he wanted to learn how to read was the Bible. And he carried a Bible with him all the time. He was constantly trying to figure out what this book said to him. And so with a little bit of instruction, this man just flowered, just bloomed. Here's what happened. We would test on Monday, and we evaluated on Monday when he first came in, and every Friday we would evaluate, every Friday. So he came in, he couldn't read anything. He could not read the alphabet. Okay, he couldn't do anything. At the end of the first week, he was reading at the first grade. It was an individual test. It was not standardized testing, individual testing. At the end of the second week, we were reading in second grade. At the end of the third week, third grade. Fourth week, fourth grade. Fifth week, fifth grade. In the sixth week, at the end of his 6-week tour with us, he was reading at the sixth grade level. He hadn't just gone through 6 years of reading education. And he'd gone through primer, pre-primer, the whole 9 yards in acquiring this memorize passages, certainly. And I'm just trying to put those together, associate the printed symbols with the